Hi, this is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make the mustard seed earring and bracelet set. Now this is kind of fun because I found this chain and I just really loved the way that it looked. It has these little links in it, so it has the small links and the large links. Now I wasn't too crazy about the small links in this particular chain, so what I've decided to do, and I'm going to show you this in the video here, is I'm going to add a little pop of color in between that. So I'm going to use this link chain, and I'm also going to add in some of these Czech fire polish beads. They have just a nice little sparkle to them, but they have that rich mustard seed color, so I thought that would play really nicely with the antique silver. So the other pieces that I'm going to be working with here today, I have some head pins here, I have some eye pins, I have a lovely little magnetic clasp that is also antique silver, so it's got that nice little rosette style to it. I have some jump rings, and I have a pair of earring hooks. Now, very simple tools for today. We're going to be using a pair of round nose pliers, a pair of flush cutters, and I have 2 pairs of chain nose pliers to help me with those jump rings. All right, so if you have everything all on your table and ready to go, let's get started. So I'm going to start here by showing you this chain. Now, like I said, you can use the little small links there. I really like these big links, so I'm going to really kind of pull these out and separate them so that I can use these in my designs. So let's start actually by creating our first pair of earrings. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to take my flush cutters and come in, and these have little thin jump rings in between them, so you don't need to cut the links. You can set these aside, and maybe you'll find something else to use your little pieces there for. But I'm just going to separate this first little link for me. And like you can see, I'm just using my flush cutters to just snip off that little jump ring there. All right, so I'm going to put that aside for a moment. Get that out of the way. There we go. All right, so this is one of my little links. It's nice and small and delicate, and what's great is that you can use it long or you can use it sort of horizontal that way. But we're going to stick to this way because I want to make a nice cute little drop earring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my head pins. Now this is an antique silver head pin. It's got that nice little ball on the end. And this is a 2-inch 22 gauge. So I'm going to be using the 22 gauge because I'm going to do a wrapped wire loop. So I slip on my bead, and then I come in with my round nose pliers, and I'm going to come just above where that bead sits, just like that. And now I'm going to bend my plier backwards, and I'm going to bend my wire up and over my plier there, and I'm going to bring it across. Now, before I do the wrap, I actually want to attach my little link to it. So I'm going to slide that on and kind of wiggle that in there. Need to open up my loop just a little bit. There we go. So now it's attached to my loop. Let me kind of wiggle that in my hand there. So it's attached to my loop before I've done my wrap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my chain nose pliers, and I'm just going to sort of grip that little loop right there. So now I am free to take that wire and wrap it up and over twice so I get a nice pretty wrap at the top. And it's already attached to my piece. So now I can just come in with my flush cutters and snip that off. Set that aside. And again, just with my chain nose pliers, I can come in and just kind of tuck that little piece of wire in there. There we go. So now when you look at it, it has a nice little wrap on it, and you're seeing it from the front there, so you see that nice little wrap on the side. All right, so that's one part there. So now, just taking my little earring hook, opening it the same way you would a jump ring, slipping that on, and now I'm just going to close that up. And I have a nice tiny little pair of earrings, but just has a little pop of color at the bottom. So that's one earring, so you simply repeat to make your second earring. But let's go ahead and move on to our bracelet here. So again, I'm going to be doing the same thing where I'm just going to be separating these links. Now, depending on the size of the bracelet you need, you'll separate more links or less, but you can just sort of keep going. I'm going to probably need, I'm going to say maybe 5 or 6, but I'm just going to snip these all off and separate out my links. And this is a great thing to do with any sort of charm chain that you might have. You can use, one link or 2, or you can create a focal. Now you can, put beads in between all of the links. Let's say you wanted to use maybe a smaller bead, something that wasn't so prominent. You can absolutely do that as well. All right, so let's see how far this gets me. That's 5. I'm just separating them out there. Yeah, let me just do one more. I think I might need at least 6. I'm going for maybe a 6.5 inch bracelet here, so. All right, so let's set that aside and kind of move these guys out of the way. There we go. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to take some of my little guys here and I want to show you something. So here's something that I learned I thought was kind of neat. So in our earring here, I'm using the antique silver head pins. But for my eye pins, I didn't have any antique silver on hand. So what I'm actually going to use is I'm going to use gunmetal. And it's going to look okay. Like it's going to look the same. So this is just a little bit more of a brushed look. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a little gunmetal. So it's going to still look the same in terms of matching with the metals, but it's just going to be a little bit shinier and a little bit darker. But if you're working with antique silver and all you have is gunmetal, absolutely use it. I still think it matches. It's totally a design choice. It is up to you. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do a simple wire loop. So I have my eye pin there and I've slid on my bead. And we're going to do a very similar technique. I'm going to pinch it a little bit lower there. I'm going to pull it back. And now I'm going to go up and over the top, rotate my pliers, and bring it across. And that is my simple wire loop. So the simple wire loop is easier than the wrapped wire loop. So if you did want to do a simple wire loop for your earring here, you can absolutely do that as well. All right, so I'm going to repeat for maybe, let's see, 2, 4, 6. I'm going to repeat for 8 of these. So do that for 8 with the eye pins, and I will be right back to show you how we're going to connect it all together. Okay, so you can see that I've kind of alternated and laid them out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start connecting them all together. So go ahead and take one of your pieces here. And we're going to open that loop, same as you would a jump ring. You can probably just bend it with one plier there. And I'm going to slip on one end of my link chain and just close that up. Make sure it has a nice good closure. And then we're just going to move down and do the same with the next one. So you're just sort of linking these together in a nice little chain manner. And you're going to see, and this is why I wasn't quite sure how many I would need to make my bracelet long enough, but I'm going to show you a couple little easy ways to adjust the sizing if you find that it's too short, too long. So what we're going to do is I'm going to continue here, just bending that open. Got to make sure it's open enough. And then when you close it, just really make sure that that eye pin is nice and closed there because we don't want anything to slip out. So what you can do here, a couple little design tips, is you can alternate the size of the beads. Let's say you wanted to do, these are 6mm, but you could do like a 6mm and then on the next link an 8mm. You can change up the colors. You can do kind of a rainbow effect. Also Swarovski crystals work wonderful for something like this, especially if you're using a brighter chain. I think that's always really, really fun to do. But yeah, so you guys can really make this, you know, sort of design idea your own. You can also hang extra pieces from here if you want, but I just like the nice little sleek link chain that's happening there. You can start to see it develop. All right, just a couple more here. And again, you just see how that gunmetal really is just part of the silver metal that's happening with that antique silver. So when you're using it in a type of design like this, you can really go either way. So don't feel like, oh, I'm buying antique silver chain, I have to have antique silver eye pins and head pins. No, you can probably get away with either this or like a stainless steel color type of wire that's going to have that little darker metal to it. I will say that the silver plated does tend to look quite bright, but it, you know, can be a little bright spot in your antique design. So always go with what your gut tells you. All right, so I'm going to bring my ruler in here because I'm getting towards the end here. And let's see. So I have my magnetic clasp out here. So what I like to do is kind of place that at one end, and then I'm going to have this at the other end. Okay, so I'm getting close to where I want to be. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open this one and loop it onto my clasp there. And I want to see, I'm just going to kind of gauge it on my wrist, make sure that nothing is twisted or tangled, and just sort of see if I can get it all the way around. Almost, almost, almost. So I have an option here, because what I'm starting to realize is that if I add the extra link and then add the extra bead, I'm going way further than I wanted to go. So what I'm thinking about doing is, instead of doing that, I can bring in either one of these little small guys here at both edges, so I can kind of cheat that a little bit. So let's try that. So this is why I told you not to discard any of those links just yet, because we might want to use them. So I can use the little link there. And now I'm just going to close that up again, making sure it has a nice closure to it. And now here's where we're going to come in with our little jump rings. So I have 2 jump rings there. Oops, and one that is now attached to my magnetic clasp. There we go. So now I can come in with a little jump ring, and this is an antique silver jump ring. Just give that a little twist to open it. And now I'm going to hook it on to that little piece there, the one I added, and hook it onto my magnetic clasp. And just making sure I have a good grip there. The magnetic clasp tends to get really friendly with your pliers. There we go. Okay, so now I've added hopefully just enough length there to get me to where I want to go. All right, so now all I need to do is I'm going to bring in another little piece, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So instead of adding a whole extra length and a half, I'm just sort of adding in a very small portion. Making sure it's open wide enough. There we go. Slide that on. And now also your clasp is attached with jump rings. Now if you didn't want to do the jump rings, you could simply attach it with the eye pin at the end. So you can add in that little piece, either let's say you wanted to create a little focal, you can do that absolutely as well. All right, so let's make sure nobody's twisted here. And then I'm going to separate my clasp. And you see that little rosette just sort of fits right out. Slide that on. And again, just coming in with my pliers. All right. There we go. And I just want to make sure that everything is going to fit the way I want it to. And let's give it a little test here. All right, there we go. Yeah, so that fits my 6.5 inch wrist. So the great thing about this little clasp is it can actually be your little focal on top while you have your little chain and all of your little colorful pieces at the bottom. So it's a really simple thing to use with the link chain, and then you just choose your favorite color and you'll find lots of little uses. So I started with the foot of this chain. So if I wanted to, I could make a couple pairs of earrings, or let's say I wanted to make a much longer pair of earrings, I could have done a double drop, something like that. So you have a lot of fun options when working with link chain. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can get all of the supplies you see here and all the tools by heading over to Beadaholique.com.